Hello, everyone, and welcome to Become the CEO of Your Health. You know, there are some conversations that you really look forward to. And I got to tell you, today is genuinely one of those. And it's interesting because these conversations sometimes come at a time when you least expect it, when you don't realize how much you need it. But in fact, it stops you in your tracks and makes you think, deeply think about what was said, how it was said. But here's something even more, how the person listened to you. Alex Street is here with me today, and I got to tell you the story. I don't really know Alex that well, but I did follow him online. We're connected through so many different incredible humans like Marsha Van Weisberg and Kim Fitzpatrick, and there's many. And so from afar, I'm watching this guy named Alex. And not only is he a lot of fun, you can feel his heart through the screen. And I just felt this pull. I didn't know why, but I always trust my instinct to reach out to him and slip into his DMs. And the funny part was about that, when I tried to do that, I was doing a voice note because I was driving and it didn't go well, didn't go as planned. And so I ended up leaving 5 different voice notes and realized afterwards only to have deadpan response, which I absolutely love from Alex, that kind of said, "Did you get it right this time?" So Alex, without further ado, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today because I just think I got so much of our conversation last week. I don't know a lot about you, but what I know immediately is that everybody's going to get a lot out of this conversation. And I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thanks for taking my DM and for having a sense of humor when I was being an idiot.
I love it. And it's actually, I don't know if that's a test or what that is. It's just when something makes me laugh, I want to just call that out and trust and do it in a way that isn't going to embarrass you, I hope. Or if it does, then we're both laughing and we're both. So it's that sort of stuff where you just go, and look, I get so many voice memos from my clients and stuff that are sharing 3-minute stories and 4 at a time that I love the voice memos. And so I saw 4 come in. I was like, interesting. And then they said all the same thing. And I was like, very interesting. I wonder what was going on there. So here we are. I'm so thrilled to be here and step into this conversation. And, you know, I'm as open as you are for this. And I trust that where we're going to take this is where it needs to go, that we're going to focus on storytelling. People are going to feel more empowered by the end of this to know that their story does matter, that it needs to be told, that it's more simple than they think it is. And if we do that and we have a lot of fun while we're having this conversation, then I mean, what better place is there to be over the next, 20 minutes, 3 hours? Who knows what this is going to be? Let's go.
Exactly. Well, I just love your energy, Alex, and your authenticity and your ability to make fun of yourself and poke fun and to make fun and poke fun at others in a kind way. I laughed. I almost drove off the road because I was laughing so hard. So you know what? You're my kind of guy. So let's, I think every good discussion begins with a good story. And you know a little bit about my story because we had a conversation last week. I don't know a lot about your story because I've never been actually in a room with you. I've heard through the grapevine how incredible you are. It doesn't surprise me. So tell me more about your story.
It's so good. I mean, there's no better question and no better invitation. And you just said, every good conversation starts with a good story. I have this phrase that I say at every workshop, every time that I can get there. It needs to be tattooed on my body. And it is that lasting impact always begins with one clear story. So I truly believe that and believe it is the start to all of this. And it's always about, okay, what is that story? How do we get there? How do you really find that? So I sit here today, I'm more clear than ever that is what I'm supposed to do, right? That this is the work that I'm here to do, to help people like you and those that are doing impact-driven work to clarify their journey, their story, so that you can speak with confidence on podcasts, stages, platforms, Instagram, in front of boardrooms, pitching your work, that it's always rooted in something. So that's me now. I've got a family. I've been married for 21 years as of tomorrow. And
Yay! Happy anniversary.
Very exciting. Thank you. Love that. We got 3 kids, 19, 16, and 14. It's just a beautiful life over here. And that's how I'm going through it. And that's the now of it. And of course, it wasn't always this way, right? So this is where we get to go back as far as possible. And for me, it's this journey of being clear when I was a kid that I wanted to follow my mom's footsteps. She was an actress, a stage actress, Margaret. And
Margaret, I like her already.
yeah. I know, exactly. That's it. There's an instant connection there. She went by Maggie. I don't know if you do, but
I don't,
that's
only
it.
because my namesake, my grandmother, for whatever reason, but when you give birth to 16 children, and I was the I was the
Goodness.
only one named after her. When my mom was nursing her on her deathbed when she was pregnant with me, and she said, "Mom, can I do anything for you?" And she said, "Yeah, I've given birth to 16 children, but I've never named one after me. If that's a little girl, will you name her Margaret?" And so it was. I was supposed to be Melissa Hope, but I am Margaret Elizabeth, and I hold that proudly. But I don't know why, but she, for some reason, didn't want me to be called Maggie. Don't know why. I think it's a cute name. But I've held her request at high esteem. So I've not been called Maggie. I can't
I love
stand
that.
being called no Marge over
Alternatively,
here.
my mother and father hated calling me anything but Alexander. They and my brother are the only ones to this day that still do. I mean, my parents don't, they're both gone, but they did to the very end, and hated whenever anybody would call me Alex. And so
There you
I
go.
still live in this place of rebellion. Every time that I write my name, it's this subtle,
Yes,
I'm my own man to my mommy.
indeed.
Okay. So growing up in that, my dad was a photographer for 40 years. I mean, that was his passion. He did that from when he was a teenager. My mom was an actress since she was a teenager. It was just, that was the life. I like to say my mom told stories through stage. My dad told stories through film. My brother got into the film industry and has done every role that you can do in the credits except for act. And I wanted to act. And so there was this movement towards that. And abundantly clear to me that that's the direction I'm going. All through high school, it was always that. And yet there was this relationship that I had with audiences, and I would consistently feel this like feeling of confusion of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving them what they want? And as I like do more work, like confusion entered my life when my parents got divorced when I was 8. And it was just this big old like, what? So I'm super clear about what I'm supposed to do, who I am. I'm a little kid. I'm loving life. And then that happens, total earthquake in my life. And they split, but they seem to still love each other. What's going on here? Now there's a new guy in my mom's life. How does that, just confusion all around. And that confusion has stuck with me ever since in so many different ways, of essentially this idea of not receiving what you expected to receive. Does that make sense?
My gosh, yes.
And so that has layered, I mean, specifically as a performer, that showed up. I remember in like 9th grade, I delivered this line for the school play. I stepped up to the front of the stage and I was supposed to say, "Here I am." And my voice cracked. And so I said, "Here I am," because puberty. And the crowd like giggled at it. And I was like, that's not the kind of laughter that I want. So it like wasn't what I expected, right? What I received wasn't what I expected. And so it was just this consistent confusion around, I'm doing what I think I should do, but it's not making the impact I think it should make immediately. And then I realize, as I've done this work, is look through and see, man, the layers and layers and layers of that, then shifting into, I ditched acting and became a youth pastor, because I guess that's a left turn that you take. I don't know. And did that work. And as I was doing that, I just look back and I'm like, all those messages that I was speaking to teenagers and to adults every Sunday, every Wednesday, there was always this fear and this confusion in my mind around like, am I saying what I want to say, or am I saying what I think they want to hear, so
Wow,
that
that's powerful.
they don't laugh at me? Does
Wow.
that stick?
Well, not only does it stick, but I think it will resonate so much with people listening, because I think people,
Yeah.
and this is what stories do, we hear ourselves and other people's stories. And yes, that makes sense. And it immediately makes me feel like I feel that, like I actually feel that. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit later in our conversation, because what we hear and what we think then has this trickle effect into the cascade that is our bodies, that becomes our health or our ill health. And it's mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and financially. And
I've
so that's really, really powerful.
I mean, you talk about all
Wow.
of that, of all the
So
health
what,
things. There's all kinds of stuff that goes through my life. Like I've had these, anaphylactic food allergies since I was a kid, and asthmatic, and then big, money issues growing up as a kid, with my dad losing basically his entire career going down the tube. Like all these things and talk about all those different areas of health, and then finding the church and youth group at like 16 years old, and becoming a youth pastor was a spiritual journey that then I deconstructed and let go of. Like all those different areas that you just labeled right there is so interesting to look at how all of that ebbs and flows and becomes strong and then sort of goes a different path. And does it become stronger? I don't know. Like all of that is just so interesting as you label that. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's all
yeah.
there.
That's in our conversation last week that just these aha moments and the connection points between your work and my work. And I mean, at the end of the day, this life experience that we're all in, we're more alike than we're different. But even the work that we do, and this is why I love collaboration. That's why everything in my life better together. Like I really
Yeah.
believe that we do all belong at the table through different lenses and perspectives. And this is why this conversation was going to excite me to no end, and it already is. Was there a moment like when you kind of realized that stories weren't just something that we tell, but something that could actually change lives? Like, did you have an aha in all of this roller coaster ride where you went, my gosh, oh,
Yeah.
this can have
Yeah.
huge impact on people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm smiling because it just brings me directly to my mom. And, you know, yeah, I could say from the beginning, there was just such a deep connection to her and who she was and how she cared for me and how I wanted to be like her, be in the theater with her, watch her, learn from her. I got the privilege of acting on stage with her when I was 19, one of the absolute highlights of my life. And then when I was 26, 28, 14 years ago, she got very sick very fast and like had to was on stage and then basically got such a bad stomach ache that she couldn't finish the show and had to leave, and then went to the emergency room and they diagnosed her with stage 4 stomach cancer just out of nowhere. And so then 4 weeks later, we're saying our goodbyes and she didn't leave the hospital. And it was just this beautiful spark of a woman, this magic, absolutely, you know, untouchable magic that she had. And the way that she could command a room, the way that she could tell a story on stage, be a character, but then talk to you afterwards and make you feel like it's just you. You're the person who that was for. And I watched this. I watched her. So you ask about a moment, and I do remember I'm going through all of these doubts and fears and worries as a 24, 25-year-old. I've got 2 young kids, been married for a few years. I'm a full-time youth pastor talking to teenagers while their parents are looking to me for advice. Like, what is life? And now my
Yes.
mom's going on her deathbed. And I've never experienced something like that before. And I had this one conversation with her that was a couple of days before she was intubated and couldn't speak anymore. And it was just me and her. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, you need to ask the question. You need to say the thing. There's not going to be more time. So for me, that question was like, what did you love about what you did? You know, you did this since you were 16. What did you love most about being an actress? And she said, it was the gift. It was the gift that she gave, that she was able to give. She said it was the gift of entertainment, that people would come into the theater with their life and their stress and their worries, and they would feel whatever they're feeling coming in. And we would put on a silly show for 2 hours. And then they would leave feeling joy, finding themselves in this story. They would leave feeling connected to something bigger. They would leave feeling differently.
Yeah.
And it's like in that moment, not only was I enamored by my mom's words, but it still sticks with me as this. What we get to do as communicators is share a story, as a gift that we give someone. Here,
Yes.
take this, and now you get to go with it. And more than that, it's about transformation. I share this story so that to help you transform from there to here. And through this experience, whether it's 2 hours we're talking, or it's 2 minutes, or it's a simple story around the dinner table, I want to help you shift in some way. So that, from, in my eyes, the queen of storytelling,
Well,
that is why
yeah.
it all matters.
Thank you for sharing that and so vulnerably. And I feel like you're painting a picture of your mom in my head I'm getting emotional when you're speaking about her. My dad has passed, and I've got incredible parents, and I adore them both. And I've experienced being there when my dad took his last breath and had those conversations. And my father was an incredible public speaker, and I used to sit in awe and watch him. Dad, how do you do that? And my dad would always just say, You do it by just being you and never pretending to be something you're not. And because then the people listening will feel it because it's coming from your heart. You know immediately, and we've all been in the room where someone's trying to be, my dad used to call them shecky, with trying to be something they're not with a mic in their hand. And it's kind of cringeworthy and everybody's kind of shrinking in the back. And, or even when it's hard and messy and vulnerable and sad or emotional, when you deliver it from a place of authenticity and heart and realness, which I think our world has lost its way in a little bit, if I'm going to say it. Everything's got to be curated and perfect. And no, that is not life.
Mm-hmm.
And so listen, my dad, he landed on that, and it's so true. And I've taken that forward in my work, in the way I communicate and the way I lead, both as
Yeah.
a human, as a parent, and as an entrepreneur. But what struck me when you're painting that picture of your beautiful mom and how you asked her that question and what she gave to you, I'm going to tell you, and I said this before we pushed record today, when we had
Yeah.
our conversation last week, I left, it was a soul-filling conversation because of the way you showed up, the way you listened, and the way you cared to ask the questions to let me be heard. And it
Yeah.
sounds like not only did your mom show you, but your mom lives on today in what you're doing so clearly, of course, in your own way, you're your own man, but what a legacy. And, that just fills my heart because that's what I'm on a mission to do and people think it's crazy and bold. It's year 4 of this grassroots changing the legacy of healthcare in this country. Who am I to do it? Well, who am I not to do it? Because I'm not doing it alone. And you sharing your legacy and
Mm-hmm.
vulnerably like this, I know right away there's someone listening that you can turn that story into
Yeah.
something greater that can be a better legacy. Like that is so powerful. Thank you for that. Like, wow. Whew.
I love how you just received that and retold that. That's so beautiful. I think that's it. To connect to what your dad told you about this idea of when you're speaking, you just simply be you.
Yes.
That's the piece that I was struggling with for so long, was this idea of like, no, I need to be something that will impress them or not get
Yes.
me in trouble, not let them laugh at me, to some degree, but to show up in a certain way that gets a result that I'm trying to manufacture. And
Yes.
that conversation with my mom, there's other conversations I could draw all along the way and moments, and there still is, that are reminding me that no, it's something from the best thing that you can do is to authentically show up as you. Nobody else can do that. Was it
Correct.
Orson Welles who said, be yourself, everybody else is taken?
Yes.
Or and so that idea is so, I think that's just at the essence of, thankfully, the work I get to do, that this is the work, as I get to help people do that, discover that, and then share that in some coherent and structured way that makes sense to them. It's the greatest joy of my life that I've been able to discover this and put something together. And to what you said of, I do feel like every day I'm continually sharing this gift that my mom did pass on to me. And I mean, there's always something bigger going on, Margaret.
Yes, indeed. And a gift that keeps on giving. They're the best. They're the best kind. That ripple effect is just so powerful. I've been thinking a lot about something and I've got some thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So, we can be transported back in a heartbeat when we hear a story. We'll remember something from 40 years ago and we can give the details and we can smell what it was like and we might see the colors and know the people and have all this we know the story, yet we'll forget statistics and other things almost immediately. So people say, oh, as we age and, when we look at, because I'm always so fascinated by the human body, and this is the science geek in me, and neuroplasticity in the brain, and, people that are suffering with Alzheimer's and don't remember anything. You turn music on and all of a sudden they come to life and they're singing and performing. And I just had a conversation with somebody I treated yesterday where that's what she did with her mother in the final days, because that's where she could connect, because she remembered those stories that were played through music. Why do you think that is?
That's great. I love, like, this is like brain nerd. Yeah, I'm with you in this, because there's a whole other piece that I teach around how to make speaking memorable. And it really
Yes.
is. It's understanding the simple ways that the brain is looking to receive information in communication. And it is not just words and it's not just stats. That's a piece of it, absolutely. But there are many more ways that we receive good information. It's through questions, it's through conversation, it's through visuals and pictures, it's through simple light connections, like you like coffee, I like coffee, now I'm more likely to remember you. Like simple things like that help the brain remember whatever is happening here. But more than any of that is, of course, what stories do. Because stories, not unlike those other things that I just mentioned, stories, when they do the studies, they attach the stickies to people's brains and then they tell them a story, their brains light up like fireworks. It's like it connects every aspect of the brain, because as I'm telling you a story about my mom in the hospital bed and the 4-week diagnosis, you're processing through your own experience. So you're now visualizing a hospital. Yep. You're thinking, whoa, that was a fast diagnosis. Whoa, why didn't they get that sooner? You're logically processing all of that. You're thinking, whoa, how old were you? How old was she? What's going on there? There's numbers. You're thinking, what question did you ask? And what question would I ask in that? There's a conversational approach there. As I'm revealing all of this, you're connecting, you're building trust with me, thinking, wow, Alex had a really close relationship with his mom. There's something really special there. There's trust, right? You're agreeing with all of us, because what's happening in that story, it's connecting all of those parts working so quickly together to awaken your brain. That's just one element of like where I'm saying right now, when I'm telling a story, it's awakening your brain. So then I imagine, again, I'm not qualified as a neuroscientist to go into this, but why do we connect to stories from 40 years ago that bring me back to that moment? Why could my dad tell me about stories from when he was 18, but he couldn't remember his grocery list from yesterday? Because there was emotion attached to it. It activated the entire system. All of that, relational, spiritual, all the things that you said earlier, health, cognitive, it all activated in those moments. And if they stick with you, and the more that you remember them, the more that you talk about those moments and those feelings and those people, the more that they're going to become solidified and the more that it will change who you are. So alternatively, maybe we can do the same thing if a story isn't serving us and it isn't something, maybe this was where you were going. If it isn't something that is helping us today, I wonder how I could reframe that story or let go of that story and replace it with something that is telling a better tale, is a better tape to play in my mind. And that takes us down a whole other path.
We're about to go down, because this is exactly, you're clearly reading my mind. And guys, I'm telling you, I literally had an Instagram conversation, one phone call with Alex. So I didn't know a lot about him, but when you just feel, and I'm going to use a word that I love and I mean, connected. So when you just talked about why do stories have power and what it does with the brain and the mind-body connection, I had written down 4 words and you checked every box that I felt. One is identity, because we can identify with something in our own story, or your dad remembers the good old days. And that was an identity piece that he held on to. Belonging. We need to feel like we belong. And so that's why stories matter. Hope, giving us hope that even though you've talked about losing your mom and how impactful it was, look at the life that you're leading now, because in her legacy, it gives us hope to carry that on forward. And last but not least, connection. Without connection, who are we as humans? And I think we've just walked through, I don't even like saying the word, after the pandemic, such a disconnected society that becomes more and more so because of these things and what have you. We crave, and the human body and the mind crave connection, and stories do that. And this is why I loved how you put that, because it's exactly what I believe. And that leads into one of the things I'm most passionate about, and you just alluded to. Prevention begins before medicine.
Yeah.
It begins before medicine. And this is where I think our worlds collide, where we intersect so beautifully. I've always believed that prevention is more than just nutrition and it's all those things, nutrition and exercise and, all of the things that you need to do. But it's also really self-leadership.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, and why do I talk about, I'm known for being that girl, become the CEO of your health. It's an action word. It's an empowering statement. Becoming the CEO of your health says that you have a place at the table or in the driver's seat, even in a system that's like, well, no, actually, you're supposed to just listen to your doctor, or you're too old, or this runs in your family, or this, you're screwed because this disease, or you have anxiety because of that. But
Yeah.
what if, and this is the whole principle of the preventative health movement that I started 4 years ago, what if we can change the story
Yeah.
so someone can change their future? Because that cascade physiologically, even down to a cellular level, when we think something different, there's a cascade in the endocrine system of hormones that actually have an impact on our nervous system, on our vascular system, on
Yeah.
on everything, on our gut. It's not a
Yeah.
surprise when you're anxious that your gut's not happy. So what if we could change our stories that we're
Yeah.
telling ourselves to then actually impact health? That's why I got fired up when we
I think
started talking, because I immediately saw it.
even part of that is, and it's, as I said, there is like to change a story. And what I'm realizing actually is that a lot of this work is less about, it's not rewriting history necessarily, looking
Nope.
into your past and saying, no, I wasn't abused. Maybe I don't, again, who knows? And you work in your own framework, but it's most of the work that I do is about simply helping people recognize that it's more of owning the story.
Yes.
When you own the story that you've lived through, that's when you get to say, whoa, wait a
Mm.
second. I am not that anymore. I am now this. And so even if I feel, for my story, even at the times when I feel confused, I feel like I'm less than, I feel like I don't have what it takes to speak to this crowd or to show up on this podcast or to sell that product at this price, and I struggle with all of that. In those moments, I get to, because I own that story of confusion to clarity, I get to say, wait a second, I feel confused right now. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm stupid sometimes, but that's not who I am. That is, I get it. That's who I was, but that's not who I am. Who I am is someone who is clear, who is direct, who has a gift to share, who is making an impact. And when I speak and my voice is heard, my goodness, who knows what could happen? And so that,
Oh,
to what you're saying there, right, is not necessarily about changing a lived experience, but owning it, saying, yeah, I get it. I was unsafe for a lot of my childhood or a lot of my teenage years, or whatever your story might be. I'm just picking one out there. But now at my best, I create safety around me. I'm a part of a support system. So when I feel unsafe, I know that that's not who I am anymore. Now I am supported. And that's the way that I'm going to move forward with this decision, this action, this day. So I'm going to speak up for myself. Does that connect, that difference of
this,
changing the story versus owning the story?
not only does it connect, I think it's really a distinction because, and I have a story, as you know, and that
Yeah.
story has been my launch pad, my
Yeah.
ability to find to fuel me to speak up and to create the change that I needed to have happen, whether that was in my own health and speaking up as a young girl, because I wasn't being seen and heard, not because my parents weren't trying, but because the system wasn't listening and because I didn't look the part. I looked well. I was a functioning, athlete with a nervous stomach, a drug-seeking teen, all the labels that I knew in my heart wasn't me. And I was sick, but no one was listening. That validation of being seen and heard. And I'm so excited because later this year, a dream of mine is happening. The book is being published, and it's not,
Yeah.
this book is not being, it's a collaborative book, because I didn't want to write this alone, because the preventative health movement is about breaking down silos and having all people at the table, conventional and complementary medicine, everyday people. And my chapter in that book, and you just talked about this, is about when she was finally seen and believed. And the power in that, my story didn't define who I was, but it fueled me to create the change I needed. The change I needed, the clinic that I wish I had, I created in Wallace for Wellness and grew over 30 years to have a safe place to break down silos and invite all parties to the table, doctors and naturopaths and massage therapists and physios and all working together. But I truly believe that the most important member in that team was the everyday person coming through the doors at the clinic. That
Mm,
little girl that wasn't seen
yeah.
and heard, didn't have a safe place to go to get help. You just talked about having a network, and now you're someone else's network, a place of
Yeah.
safety. And that's why I called family, PHAMILY. Join the family, because you do not have to do this alone. And
Yeah.
sharing your story can be scary. Yes, vulnerable for sure, but also healing. And that's what I called our conversations today. I don't know if you noticed that. Stories that heal. Like if we are able to recognize that it doesn't have to define us, but it doesn't have to continue to be us, and we're allowed to change the course of and the direction of our lives through storytelling,
Yeah.
that's where self-leadership takes off. And so how incredible is that? Because that leads to advocacy. And I'd like to talk about that right now. But before I do,
Great.
I have one other question, because I was thinking of this. Because you're the story guy, is there one story you consistently hear that breaks your heart? And I don't mean necessarily the details of a story. Is
Yeah.
there a theme in stories that gets you and maybe a fuel for you to keep doing what you're doing because you recognize this, how important this work is?
Wow, that's a good question. That I always want to recognize this because I do a lot of podcasts and have a lot of conversations, and I want to call out when I've never heard or been asked a question before, and it's a good one. That's nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
My mind immediately went to, I mean, like childhood abuse or trauma or significant loss of like a parent very young. So I think those are very similar in the mind of if if you're abused by someone you trust young, then you've lost that connection, and if they die, then you've lost that connection. Again, I'm not a therapist, and I don't want to conflate ideas that some people might already
No.
separate, but there's this feeling when you just brought that up, which neither of those are part of my story. I just recognize that when I hear these stories, what happens is somebody will draw attention to that being a part of their life. Like, before I was 10 years old, these things happened and were done to me, and it's horrific and it's terrible and it's monstrous. And so there's that element of it, of just why does that happen? And my heart hurts. And that's it. It's just a big old why.
Yeah.
And then there's the part where I look at who that person is now that I'm looking at across the table and talking to, who's telling me this story. And the thing that they're struggling with now is some version of not speaking, not using my voice or trying to find my confidence. And so there's something that to me, when you talk about what is there a story that is the hardest to hear, there's something about when something happens to a child that quiets them from fulfilling their mission, impact, purpose in this world. And especially if that thing that happened to them was out of some disgustingly selfish act by another. That, right? I mean, the more I dig
Yeah.
into this, the more that just hurts. And I go, that shouldn't be. And I'm thankful that we're talking about it, is all that I
Yes.
can
And
say.
that's why
That's it. So there's something there. Yeah.
I asked the question, because I really think there's a lot of people talking. There's a lot of conversations happening, and I want them to. But I also want to be part of, and I don't even want to use the word trend, I want to be part of the fabric of humanity that can stop and really hold space and truly not just listen, but hold space for others in the hard. And as a therapist, I know this from the incredible work I get to do of laying hands on people and the mind body connection. Our bodies are a house for our emotions. And I have witnessed a lot. One day I'll write that book about the
Mhm.
stories from my table, because it's taught me so much. The body is an incredible thing. But what's more incredible is the ability that we can have, if we choose, to allow people, by asking the hard questions, and be willing to actually listen and
Mhm.
hear it. We don't have to solve it, but in the storytelling, and this is why I was so attracted to you, Alex, because in the storytelling, which is going to lead into my next, before I have
Yeah.
some rapid fire questions, it leads to advocacy, and advocacy leads to real change and transformation. But when someone's stuck in without their voice,
Yeah.
and I don't want to use all the words, the trauma, because yes, it is trauma. It is traumatic response for sure. But
Mhm.
stories and holding space and having real candid conversations that allow people to see themselves and give them permission that actually in this world, on this planet, there are people that are willing to give the space for them to truly let go and move forward. It is part of their story, but
Yeah.
that's how we get people to the next step, best step of advocacy. And if
Well,
I
I
can
think
have
that's
a small place in that, that's the key.
yeah, and that's I think that's beautifully said, and that's the piece of the ownership. Yeah, it's what I realize. A lot of the work that I do, right, is with brands. It's with personal brands, business owners, coaches, small businesses, and really, look, let's find your story so that you can talk about your brand better and those sort of things. And it's, towards building a business. And I love it. And it's great because it is story focused and
Yes.
impact driven and it's beautiful. And I always say there's a point in every coaching conversation where I will remind them that, wait, just take a second here because your story, this work of discovering your story is first for you. We do this work. A lot of us are like, yeah, okay, help me find my story so that I can speak better on stage. Sure. Yes, that's the gift. Absolutely. Give that away. But there's something here that you need to own first that you have, by the grace of God, transformed already. You have already changed. And if you can first recognize and celebrate that, then there might not be anything that can stop you as you go forward and you continue to share that. If you can already own that, yeah, that was terrible, but I am not that anymore. That's who I was. But then thankfully I found this community that helped me become this version of myself that I am now and want to be going forward. Then every day I get to remind myself of that yeah, I feel this
That
pain. I'm connected to this, but I've already transformed and I'm going to continue to transform. So the story is first for you. You own that. Then you get to advocate on that behalf and say, look, I'm not that anymore. Let's go forward. I'm this person who stands up for themselves now. And that's what I'm doing in this moment. And you continue to show yourself in that way. So that transformation is so key as you do that. So you can look at yourself every day and say, I'm not who I was.
so powerful, Alex. And I think one of the words that hopped out of my mind when I'm hearing you speak is the fact that accountability, you don't get to give a gift before first wrapping it and recognizing what it is you have.
That's
And
cool. I like
so,
that.
right. So and I think, and this is systematic, and this is why changing the legacy of healthcare is a steep uphill climb. And this is a complex issue. I'm not being Pollyanna. However, we have worked in a system of passive pill for nil, wait till it's broken sick care. And we don't play a role in that. We just waddle to our doctor. What's wrong with me, doc? And then they're going to tell us, and then we do what we do. And we don't have some accountability and ownership. And in fact, for so many years of my career, if I would, at my clinic suggest somebody change this or try that, what does OHIP cover it would be their first question here in Ontario. For those that are watching globally, OHIP is the government paid program because investing in your own health, well, I want someone to fix me. There wasn't a lack of accountability that, in fact, alongside my doctor, my naturopath, my therapist, I am the most important member of that team. And I have to take some ownership, own what I have. And in the story of what you're telling about giving a gift away, then you get to wrap that gift in a different package and give it to others. But you got to do the work
Yeah.
on yourself first. And
Yeah.
that's, I don't know about you, but it's continual. I'm not
Well,
perfect over here.
because
So
some people are like, you want me to
constant.
give a gift? You want me to give the gift of my story out there? So then they're just packaging all of that in and they're saying, well, my mom left when I was 6 and then my dad was a drug addict. And okay, I put all of that into this box. And then I say, okay, well, then I got this marriage and I left this job and this thing. And then that's all going into the box. They wrap that up and give that. They're like, you want me to give that gift? And
Right.
of course it feels big and messy and
Heavy.
oversharing and heavy. Of course it does, because those are the elements. Those are the elements of your story. Yes. But the story, remember this, the story is the transformation. The story is how you changed through all of that. So that's the gift that we get to share here, Margaret. And I love the way they were framing that. You get to package this up and you give that. But the good news is, as far as goes to sharing your story, you can do all that work to discover in all those moments. You can walk through that. But when it comes to sharing your story, it can be in as little as mine is a story of going from confusion to clarity.
Yes.
And so if you're feeling that, I get it. And here's some hope. That's it. No details necessary, but there's a story there that makes you want to ask for details, at which point I'm free to share as much as you want. But we don't need to start with the giant box messily wrapped up and hand it over with some
No.
fear of where could this go.
Exactly. And that doesn't help the person you're giving the gift to either, because now what do they do to hold that? There's not a lot of hope in that. But it can be different if we change that story. And I absolutely
I
love
love
that.
that.
If somebody's right now is just feeling really discouraged and stuck and overwhelmed and invisible and all the things that many of us do throughout life, it's one of the things you would tell them.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's not only your story matters, but you matter. Actually, 5 words. We need what you have.
Mic drop.
I
Okay,
like to
mic
think,
drop. That has to go on a t-shirt. Do you have a t-shirt? I'm going to do a bit of branding here. We need a t-shirt and we
we need
need
what you
you.
have.
Okay, everybody that's listening, a little levity here. If you don't follow Alex on social media, you must. What's your handle on Instagram?
Yeah, at Street Says.
So one of the
Street.
things I love is your humor. And recently, you're always holding up some object as a microphone, and it always makes me giggle. And you were speaking to, I forgot what you were speaking to the other day. It might have been a flower, or I don't know what you were speaking to. It was hysterical. But I think we need a t-shirt with that on it, and you with some funny microphone in your hand, because
That's great.
that's perfect, because it says exactly what this whole conversation has been about. It is recognizing just how important it is to be seen, heard, and voiced. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Okay. So we could go on for days, but I have some rapid fire questions, because I just love to get to know you more. And I think there'll be nuggets in what you say here. And whether you're listening to this conversation and you are struggling and hurting and have a story you want to share, or you're ashamed to share, because we didn't even get down there. We need to have another podcast all about that, like why people don't share their stories, or why they think they can't share their stories. But or you're a business leader and you're trying to be able to share a story in a way that's going to move your business forward, or you're on a mission, you're part of the preventative health movement, and together we're linking arms to change the legacy of healthcare in this country. These types of conversations matter. These types of people matter. And you now officially, Alex, whether you like it or not, are part of the family, PHAM. You've been adopted. Because we don't do this alone, and we don't have to do this in competition. We can do it in collaboration. And that's what I believe elevates all of us. So the only way to get to know a family is to shoot some questions around and then just listen to their answers. So you ready?
Great. Let's go.
Okay, I want you to complete these sentences. A meaningful story is
A clear transformation.
Love that. Healing begins when
We own the story.
this leadership means to you. What is leadership to you?
Vulnerability. Does that count? One word? Is one word okay?
World needs more other than stories, because we know they need more stories. The
Yeah.
world needs more.
Wonder.
I like that. Wonder. Yes.
Because it's
Yes.
all a miracle. It's all magic. What are we? We're on a floating ball in space.
It is incredible. You're so true. It's so true. You're currently learning
Grace for patterns, I think. Great grace for, my own rhythms, routines, and grace.
that. And last but not least, the story you're still writing is
About jeez. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to go about a boy who kept finding joy in what is and just wanted others to do the same.
I don't know about it. I don't know about everybody else, but this for me has been a very meaningful conversation, real conversation. And to me, those are the ones in my life that have always been the most impactful and the opportunity. This is an invitation for anybody listening and watching to find your family. And it doesn't just have to be by blood, and to share your story. Your voice matters. Self-leadership is critical, but you don't have to do it alone. You can do it in community. And Alex, you have so much, you're offering so much to the world. And when I hear the things that you're doing and you want, words like wonder, they're not even used much. And yet they're so important and needed. And your authenticity and showing up as you are gives permission for other people to do the same. And that's the world I want to live in. And that's what this movement in preventative health is about. And we will have a healthier planet if we start teaching the generations ahead of us and the ones behind us, if we start having more of these kinds of conversation. So thank you for your work. And I can't stop this conversation without acknowledging this because this is a big deal. So tell us first what the story arc is, because this guy this week got it trademarked. And I just want to celebrate because that is a big deal. And I'm telling you, we don't celebrate our successes as much as we should. You did. You came on and said how proud you were, and you should be.
Yeah.
But what does it mean? What is this story arc? And why is it important to have it trademarked? It's so cool.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much. I mean, this really is the foundation of the work that I do, story arc coaching. It's all focused on this simple image of an arc. Looks like a rainbow, just one line, just from there to here. And then the focus of it is that I have always in my work looked at that and thought, okay, if I'm going to deliver a message, what's the path that we're taking them on? What's the arc that we're moving through? And as that turned into something that I then coach for others over the last 7 years and help you through, I'm constantly talking about this, and I'm always doing this action. Okay, so your story looks like this, and I'm moving my hand through the air like that arc. And so I wrote a book on it called Story Arc, came out 2.5 years ago. You can find that on Amazon. And then went through this process of saying, okay, can I just trademark that word, story arc, capital S, capital A, make that my own in Canada? And you do it, you go through the process, you pay some money, you wait 8 months, and they come back and say, there you go. It's
yes,
yours.
You can. Yes,
and
you can.
So yeah, to me, what it is the simple, it's for you. Ultimately, it's a tool for you to see a story is about going from here or from there to here, and watch the arc. You go back to grade 9 English, the rising action, the climax, all that's the arc. But when you think of a story, just think of going from that point to this point, and everything else you can tell in between. And that's your story arc.
Well,
so there we go.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That must feel really good. That must feel
It's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. It is. And as I say, it's like, I'm just somebody who has a million ideas going all at once. And at my worst, I beat myself up over that. I say, you didn't land on this thing, or you didn't stay with that idea. Or if you just stuck there, then you would have been making millions. Maybe you're like me, or people like me. And
yep, I resemble that comment.
So that act of, going through the law to lock something in with my name attached to it. It's like, it's affirming, it's encouraging. It's as I say, it's the grace for myself. It's all of that.
And it's earned. And I think sometimes in entrepreneurship, because you're so busy just doing, that we often forget to say, wow, I actually earned this. And that's super cool.
Yeah. And it's fun in the application where I get to literally say, I literally wrote the book on this. Like, that's fun to say, and to say I've made this much from coaching this process. You're right. It is. It's this. I've been working at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, Alex, thank you for your time. Thanks for your time, for your energy. And I got a feeling, I think there's a song there. I got a feeling that there might be more collaboration and conversations in our future, because this was soul giving. And I know. So if anybody's watching, you need to reach out to Alex. I'll make sure we put all of his contact information there, and stay tuned, because I know there's so much more to come. So remember, your story matters. And I got a question I'm going to leave you with. How are you going to write your next chapter? That's it. That's all. How are you going to write your next chapter? It's an open book, and it's yours to write. And we're here to help you. Until next time, remember, a healthy tomorrow begins with prevention today. And we'll see you all soon.